I'm very excited about the next piece that we're going to play, The Erie Lines West. It was composed by the band's first director, J.L. Swihart, and I'll let Chris talk about the history of Mr. Swihart and the piece, but I do want to share that, Elmer Ron kept the band's library and then passed it on to his son Richard, and Richard had file cabinets full of music, and then the Ron family donated the music to Huntington University. Back in probably the 80s, early 80s, we played Erie Lines West. I found it in the files and pulled it out for the band to play, and it was kind of a great thing to connect to the heritage of the band. After Mr. Ron passed, the family donated the music to Huntington University, and I made some inquiries. At the time, one of our band members, Brandon Riggle, was the band assistant. I asked him if it was in the university files, and then later, when Doug McElhaney took over the duties as the director of bands at Huntington University, I asked him if it was in the files, and unfortunately, it wasn't. And that was, I was feeling kind of bad about that because I was afraid that it was going to be lost forever. The Erie Railroad had the copyright for the march in 1917, and it's not one that is currently in print, and I'm sure the copyright has long since expired, but it was just really kind of sad that there was no way to find or play that march. And then Richard Ron's son, Ed, who is currently a member of the band, knows that I kind of developed an interest in the railroad and stuff having to do with the band, and also the Erie Railroad itself. And Ed had shared digital copies of different pictures and documents and things. And one of the things that he sent me by email was a photo of the solo cornet part for Erie Lines West. And, that was terrific. And I just happened to, wish aloud to Chris Whitaker here that, that it would be great if there would be some way to, put the march back together. And Chris volunteered his wife, Diane, and she is a composer and arranger that's really starting to make a name for herself in the music publishing business, and he said that she would take a look at it. And so what we got was the Erie Lines West was just off of that single solo cornet part. Knowing what she knows about composing marches, she was able to reconstitute the march for us, and so we are playing Erie Lines West, edited by Diane Whitaker. Chris was the director of the band from 1986 to 1993, and so he's going to conduct the march, the Erie Lines West, edited by Diane Whitaker.
Thank you very much. J. Lawrence Swihart, the writer of that, originally wrote that as Mackerel's March. Same as our band. This band used to be Mackerel's Band. It was named after the superintendent of the yard, a highly respected band that apparently passed away not long before the band was formed. And when he copyrighted 1917, it was copyrighted as Erie Lights West. Lawrence Swihart was not a member of the railroad group. He had family, I guess, employed by railroad, but he was a Huntington treasure. He was the first director here, but he was a school teacher, band director. He was of course, the first band director for us, but he was also a good composer, but also very strident with his music. I came across a picture of him one time, and it didn't have his name, just apparently a quote he used a lot: "Don't chew your music." Not quite sure what that means, but clearly he took music very seriously. He got the band off to a very good start. That particular march was played for the first time in 1916. Every summer, the Erie Railroad would have an employees gathering, and they would meet usually in places east, a depot or shop in Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey. But in 1916, they came to Huntington, and they had their multi-day celebration at Hyers Park, and every group that got off the train, they were met with this band right here and that march. In 1917, Swihart left Huntington to go to Evanston, Illinois. And he took a similar job there that he had here, which was supervisor of the school of music teachers. And in 1920, he actually became the first band director at Northwestern University, so he was kind of a trail setter of sorts. In 1917, at least for part of the season, the band replaced him with a trumpet player, Judd Miller. And Miller was also a very good musician. It was under his baton that one year, this band was selected as the best Erie band in the company. They were always near the top, but under his baton one year they finished #1 in the band. He led the band up through 1922, when I think, as Bill mentioned, national strikes struck the Erie Railroad. They were protesting lower wages. And all these bands that the Erie Light had formed for their members to play in and to create good public relations, now they created a problem for them because all these bands were available to play, support the workers in the strike. And all of them did except one. Huntington's band, led by Director Miller and band president John Otis, decided they would be neutral. They would not be for or against. And it was a pretty ugly strike. It went on for some time, but their neutrality was rewarded because they said all the music and all the instruments here. And you might think that was a good situation, but the strike caused a lot of employees to be transferred. A lot of them went to Ohio. And that apparently included our director, Judd Miller. So at the end of the 1922 season, they were looking for a new director. And this time they selected yet another trumpet player from the band named Elmer Ron, which you've heard about already. He'd spent the last 2 years in Chicago studying music, and he was John Wayne. He came over the hill and he rescued the band. The talent pool was decimated, so the band was small for a few years, but by the late 1920s and 1930s, it was very strong. They played throughout Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Canada. They played at the Indy 500. One year, they would get on the Interurban and head down to the Indy 500. One year, one of the players left his instrument on the dock. And as the train pulled out, you might guess that maybe a talking to from the director was in order, but it was actually Elmer Ron who wondered where his horn was when they got to Peru. And I think it's the actual horn that's out here that you can see, and we hope to take a look at some of the memorabilia. He lived during World War II. You might think it was kind of a bad time, but and it was with players. For the railroad, the World War had kind of picked up the economy. There's plenty of work for everybody, but some of the numbers were down in the band. For the first time, Elmer Ron let some women play in the band. It had always been a men's group only, and of course today we think socially. But there were other reasons too. For one thing, it was not a community band; it was a railroad band. So there were mostly men and employees. But also there was a social problem. I mean, it was just, it was kind of questionable at the time to have women travel with men. They went all over and they traveled long distances, and it just kind of seemed unseemly. And so they solved that problem by saying, well, we don't have women in. But apparently during World War II, Elmer Ron let some women play the band for local concerts, perhaps. Then ceased that practice for a time. I think it's generally recognized that the first permanent female member of the band was Nancy Hendry, who was the daughter of one of our sousaphone players, John Henry. And if you want to know where she is today, she's sitting over here in the clarinet section. Nancy Henry, the first woman. I was going to ask you about the math on this. This is your 50th summer playing in the band. 50 years with the Erie Band, Nancy Henry. In the 1940s, 1950s, my father started playing with the band. Not that he was a railroad employee, but local band directors had always been part of the band, and they were not resented by the employees, the band members. They were actually appreciated. It elevated the quality of music, and it made it more fun for everyone. My father was a band director in Wabash County, and in Roanoke High School, and Andrews High School, right up until the consolidation. And so I got to learn a lot about things with him. Of course, we would always come to Erie Band things. The Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette made a quote. I was going to try to bring it out to you. They talked about Elmer Ron, that his subdued style was in contrast to the boisterous music. And my mother told me the first time she heard the band, you kind of expect the band to look like the director in front of them. And Elmer Ron was kind of a slight man. He was not demonstrative. And when he gave the downbeat, the band started playing, she just about fell off her chair. It was a huge, big sound, and the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette pointed out that it was in contrast to the band's aggressiveness. I mentioned also, my father mentioned how much fun it was. They would take trips to Conneaut Lake, Pennsylvania for the railroad employees, still in the 1950s and 1960s, and they had a good time. In 1965, 50 years ago, probably tonight, Elmer Ron had a 50th birthday celebration concert for the band down at Hyers Park at the old pavilion on the stage. He kind of took a lot of time during that summer of '65 to celebrate the July 4th Festival at Krigbaum Field. We played Marching on to Victory that you heard earlier, sung by Fred Vendrick of Memphis. And on this particular evening at Hyers Park, Elmer Ron didn't take the microphone very often. Usually it was Dick Creed, if you remember Dick Creed, one of the tenor sax players. But on this evening, he took the microphone and he introduced 8 or 9 men who had been part of the original band in 1915. Elmer Ron was the only one that was still playing from the original band, but there were 8 or 9 that were still alive, and he'd invited the concert. And I remember he went down each day and he talked about each one. He was very loyal to the band members and the past band members. As a young kid, I remember watching these men and thinking, my goodness, they were there in 1915. You might as well have told me they knew George Washington personally. It was amazing to me, and still amazing to me now. I joined the band in 1974 while still in high school, thanks to my dad. It was not a case where, let's give the kid a good experience. No, I was there because I was expected to contribute. It was about the music. And there were, I have to think of that particular first practice that I went to, there were only 4 women in the band, and 3 of them are here tonight. One of them was Nancy, one of them was Shirley Kaiser, I see right in front. That's why I thought of that. Played clarinet with the band. Good to see you, Shirley. And the other one was the mother of someone you've already talked about. There was one percussionist there that I remember gave me a nice smile when I came in, the only smile I got the whole evening. But it turns out she has had a very pretty daughter that I met later, and tonight she's my mother-in-law, and sitting up in the top row up here. Her name's Marilyn Hardy. It was a different band than what it is now, but it changed quickly in 1976. So the railroad went out, as Bill mentioned, and then just a few days before the first practice, Elmer Ron passed away. He had the music all set, he was ready to go, but died suddenly. And Norris Houston, the Huntington North Band director, filled in that summer. Had a lot of absences, so Tom McElhaney, the band director at Salamone Junior High, helped. And a few other fellows sat in. I remember the band director at Manchester College helped out. But it was a very haphazard summer. A lot of people wondered how could we go on without Elmer Ron. The railroad going out hurt, but Elmer Ron dying was even more worrisome, which I think says a lot about the personality of Mr. Ron, someone I respected a great deal. But the band did continue, thanks to Mr. Houston. At the end of the season, Mr. Houston made it clear he would just help that summer. He'd been Elmer Ron's long-time assistant. But Tom McElhaney said he would continue, and he led the band through 77 and 78, transitioning it into what you see today. The band he left behind is very much like what you hear tonight. A lot more women, a lot of young people, and he turned it into a genuine community band. And we owe a great deal to Tom McElhaney. You're going to hear from him a little bit later. In 1985, I kind of was asked to be Bill's assistant. He had some family things that took his time, and so I helped lead the band in 85 and 86. And at the end of the 86 season, Bill suggested we make it permanent, and I was delighted. And I had a lot of fun. I did a lot of things the same way Elmer Ron did. We had concert marches and, of course, Susan King marches. We featured a section every summer. We had a soloist every summer, almost always for the band. He played a lot of musical medleys, which weren't as popular when I was director, so we played movie music and medleys for movies. But I had a good time and a great time. By 1993, I was teaching across the state at a high school. We would live over here 3 days a week and 4 days a week over there, cram all my high school things in there. We had a growing family, and my wife suggested that maybe it was time to give something up. She did not suggest it be my job. So I told the band in 93 it would be my last, very regretfully, because I had a great time. And it's fun playing the band again. We had a couple local directors that were interested, but clearly everybody's first choice was Thane Campbell, who is now in his 22nd summer of leading the Erie band. And again, we invite you to see the memorabilia out there, but as the mayor mentioned earlier, this is an important part of Huntington. The railroad was very important to this city. It grew this city, and then the city transitioned through very positive leadership, transitioned from a very important rail town to a city that you couldn't even get anything delivered by rail anymore. The Erie band's been there through all of it, and we're an important fabric, part of the fabric and tapestry of this community. No matter how old you are sitting here today, you can always remember an Erie band that served the community here, and it's been great to be part of it. So we're going to introduce Thane again, and this is this as if on wings? No. This is Erie Lackawanna? Erie Lackawanna March, written when I was director by a former member named Dan Schuyler. He was from Fort Wayne, played low brass, and leading it is Thane Campbell, is Tom McElhaney, that I mentioned earlier, that will be leading Erie Lackawanna Railroad Band March by Dan Schuyler.
Chris, as I was walking out, said, "We're all saying something tonight, you need to say something." So I thought, well, I don't know a thing about what we're playing as far as a piece of music. I can't give you any history on that. But I can tell you that our family has been involved with the Erie band for a number of years. My father played percussion, and I used to, as a kid, come running up on the stage afterwards and help him put his drums away. I kind of got interested in the band, eventually became a band director. My son plays in the band. My grandson usually plays in the band. He's on vacation at Mackinac Island this week and couldn't be here. But it's become a kind of a McElhaney tradition too. So I want to thank the band for a very nice march tonight. Thank you.
Next, we're going to feature our lower brass section with an arrangement of "I've Been Working on the Railroad." Our director, sorry about that. Hello. Slapstick for today. Our director was one of Elmer Ron's favorite marches by F.E. Bigelow. And I think it's kind of ironic that, you know, as Chris was saying, his conducting style was, shall we say, austere. And this particular march kind of starts on an offbeat with the trumpet section. And I think that from stories that I've heard from band members, getting this march started must have been quite an adventure. So, Our Director by F.E. Bigelow. And in honor of Mr. Ron, Thane will be using Elmer Ron's baton, which is on loan to us from the Huntington County Historical Society. if you didn't get to take a look at some of the displays on your way in, please take some time to, the Huntington Historical Society has brought in some items regarding the history of the band, and I also brought in some of the things from my collection and also downloaded some newspaper articles from the time of the band, including an article from actually one ad from 1915. J.L. Swihart placed an ad in the Huntington paper advertising for used band instruments. So I don't know if he was looking for instruments for the railroad band or if he was looking for instruments for his school band, but there was that. Articles about the arrival of brand new instruments in 1916. There's a mellophone, which was an instrument similar to a French horn that is marked property of the Erie Railroad, and that's out there. And so there are all kinds of things you can look at out there, and we thank again the Historical Society for sharing those displays with us. So next up we have America the Beautiful, and we're going to feature vocals by Brandon Riggle. Next up, Brandon is going to sing Irving Berlin's God Bless America. Before we close tonight's concert, I'd like to acknowledge some organizations that supported the band. When the railroad went out of business, the Huntington City Parks Department continued to fund the band. Early on, the Erie band, the members were paid and had special status with the American Federation of Musicians. And eventually the union ceased supporting that because we paid far less than scale. But while I was the director, they were still paying members. And then I think during Chris's time, they stopped paying members of the band, and we kind of made the transition to a true community band. And eventually the city dropped funding for the band, and we're kind of relying on some donations and are working on becoming a 501c3 so we can accept donations eventually. And probably the number one organization that provides the most support to the band now is the Huntington County Community Schools. And we have sort of a relationship with adult education, and it is through Chad Doherty, the principal at Huntington North, that we're able to use this facility, and we certainly appreciate that because it would be very difficult for us without his cooperation. And we also thank Mr. John Gardner, the assistant band director here, and we thank Heather Marshall, the band director here at Huntington North, for sharing their facility with us. And again, without them, we could not do what we do, so we appreciate their contributions. Well, there's some special significance of this last number, the Stars and Stripes Forever, where, as you know, the Stars and Stripes Forever features the piccolo part, and in particular the D-flat piccolo, which, ladies, don't be mad at me, but it's kind of the oddball of the band. And the piccolo, you know, was an orchestral instrument, and band music tends to be in flat keys, and some of the fingerings were kind of difficult. Now, Adolph Sax, the inventor of the saxophone, had a major role in organizing the instruments of the military band, and most instruments in the military band are either in the key of B flat or E flat. And why they chose D flat, I'm not sure, but so we are playing Stars and Stripes Forever, featuring the D-flat piccolo, and we wish to dedicate this to Deb Bickle, who is currently hospitalized, and we wish her good health and quick recovery. So Deb, this is for you.